So as I said, we are continuing with our theme leading up to Easter of looking at these events that took place in and around Holy Week. This special week that began with Jesus riding triumphantly into Jerusalem, where he was celebrated as a king. And then less than a week later, he was tried and crucified, and he died and was raised on the third day. And so all of this all takes place in just one short week. But in between those two sort of extremes on either end, there's a lot of stuff that happens. And we've already covered some of the big events. We covered Jesus coming in and cleansing the temple by overturning the money changers. And we learned about how that has to do with what it truly means to worship from our own heart and not for what we get out of things. And we talked about the anointing at Bethany, which took place right before Jesus rode into Jerusalem. And the message from that was that we shouldn't listen to the voice in our head that tells us that small acts of kindness aren't worth it, that we need to do something bigger and better and save our energy for that. But that when we feel our heart calling us to do something good, that there's power in that. Even in small acts of charity, there is incredible spiritual power. And so now we come to one of the most powerful stories in the entire Word, which is the story of Jesus' Last Supper with his disciples. And so just to put this in context of where we are in the scope of Holy Week, you have Jesus riding into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, and then on Monday he goes and he cleanses the temple. And then on Tuesday he teaches in the temple, and there's more things going on there. Wednesday, we're not given any explicit instruction as to what happened on Wednesday of Holy Week. There are some people who believe that maybe at the beginning of our reading today, when Jesus sends his disciples to go and prepare for the Passover feast, that maybe that happened on Wednesday and then they ate on Thursday. But we know that they ate the Last Supper on Thursday. And on Friday is when Jesus is crucified. So we are coming right up on the end of Jesus' life. This is the last full day that Jesus is alive in this world. And he eats the Passover feast with his disciples. And so as the story goes, he sends a couple of his disciples into town ahead of him to prepare for the Passover. And he tells them, when you get there, you'll see a man carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he goes, and you can ask the master of that house where we might be able to celebrate the Passover together. And there's going to be a furnished upper room that you can prepare. And they go and they find it just as Jesus explained. They found the person with the pitcher of water, and they go into the house, and the master of the house says, yes, you can have this upper room. And so they prepare for the Passover feast. So what is the Passover feast, and why was that so important for Jesus to celebrate this with his disciples? We might remember the story of the Passover from Exodus, that this is when the children of Israel are being held as slaves in Egypt. And Moses is there, and he's trying to free them out of slavery, but the Pharaoh will not let the Israelites go. And so the Lord sends the series of 10 plagues on Egypt. There's frogs, and there's locusts, and there's the river turns to blood. There's all kinds of these horrible plagues. But no matter what happens, the Pharaoh will not let the children of Israel go until the last of these plagues, which is the most severe, is the death of all of the firstborn in all of the families in Egypt. But the Lord told the Israelites that if they kill a lamb and eat it and take some of the blood from that lamb and put it over the doorposts of their door, that when in the night, when all of the children, the firstborn, die in Egypt, it will pass over their house and their children will be kept safe. And so celebrating the feast of the Passover is a way of celebrating the way that the Lord protects us. It celebrates the way that the Lord keeps us safe in times of adversity, and the way that the Lord loves and cares for us and frees us from spiritual slavery the same way that he freed the Israelites from the slavery in Egypt. And so this is what Jesus and his disciples come together to celebrate. They come together to eat a meal together, honoring the Passover. And while they are sitting down to dinner, Jesus does something that's a little bit strange. He takes some bread, and the kind of bread they were eating is like this. It's not like the bread that we get at stores that's big and fluffy that we make sandwiches out of. It's this, which is called unleavened bread, which this looks more like a cracker, right? But this is a kind of bread that the kind of bread that we eat has something called leaven in it. We put like yeast or something in it that reacts with it so that when you bake it, that's what fluffs it up. But they were eating unleavened bread, so they don't add something in it that makes it puff up. So it comes out, and it can be kind of like a flat cake or almost like a cracker. So he takes the bread like this, and he breaks it, and he gives it to his disciples, and he tells them, "Take and eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." So he gives them bread and says, "This is my body." And then he takes the cup of wine that he had, and he gives it to them and says, "Divide this among yourselves." And then he tells them, "This is my blood, which is shed for you." And so the disciples take it. They take the wine, and they take this bread. And we can imagine they might have been kind of confused. What is he talking about? That this bread is his body, and this wine is his blood. So what was it that Jesus was telling them in this message here about this bread and this wine? Well, Jesus knew that his life on this earth was about to end. He knew, he might have even known the exact time that he was going to die. So he knew that his time there was running out. And he might have been thinking, well, after I die, they're not going to have me here in the same way. We're not going to have the Lord as a human being here that we can see, that we can talk to and learn from the way we learn from our teachers or our parents or our friends. But he was saying that even though my body is going to die and I'm no longer going to live here as a human being like the rest of you, I'm not going anywhere. That I'm going to be with you forever. That my body is here with you in this bread and in this wine. But how does that work? How is the Lord with us through bread and through wine? Well, we know that everything in the Word is representative, that everything in the Word holds a correspondence to something spiritual, and everything natural corresponds to something spiritual. So just like that, the bread and the wine have these spiritual correspondences. And we know that everything that our body does represents the things that are going on in our mind and in our heart, right? If you see someone and they're smiling, you can say, "Oh, I know that that person is happy in their mind and in their heart because I see their body smiling." The things that our bodies do represent what's happening in our mind. And so the act of eating something or drinking something we can think of as taking things into our mind. That's what's represented there. And so we can eat good things that represent taking good things into our minds, good spiritual ideas into our minds and into our hearts, or we can eat bad things. Maybe you've had the unpleasant experience of eating something that was past its date, and you might not have realized it. And you take a bite, and you go, "Ugh," and you have to spit it out because it tastes bad. That's what we're supposed to do with bad spiritual ideas, with false ideas or evil thoughts that we have. We want to spit them out like bad food. But the Lord gave us this special food for us that he tells us, he asks us to eat this bread and to drink this wine. And what's represented in us eating this unleavened bread and drinking this wine, it represents the ways that the Lord is with us. The bread in the Holy Supper represents the Lord's divine love. And so when we eat this bread, it is like receiving the Lord's divine love into our minds and into our hearts. And that's the love that inspires us to do good, that inspires us to care about other people. And the wine represents the Lord's divine wisdom. This represents all of the teachings that the Lord gives us in his word that show us, that give us the ideas of how we can go about loving other people and living a good life. And so when we eat this bread and we drink this wine, it represents us receiving the Lord's love, his divine love, into our minds and into our hearts, allowing the Lord to influence us. And it also represents us receiving the Lord's divine wisdom, receiving his teachings into our minds and into our hearts that teach us how we are supposed to live. And so when we have the Lord's divine love and we have his divine wisdom with us, then the Lord is there with us. The Lord is with us all the time, but it's through his divine love and through his divine wisdom that he can really still be present with all of us. And here's what's really powerful about this little act, this sacrament that we've been given of just eating this bread and this wine. What's powerful about it is it's not just about the Lord being present with us individually. It's not just that when I come up and take the Holy Supper, that the Lord is personally there right with me in the ways that I need it. But the Lord is able to be present not only in us, but through us. That when we receive the Lord's divine love and we welcome it into our hearts, and we receive the Lord's divine wisdom and we welcome it into our minds, what that looks like in practice is that we put those to use and we live a good life of loving and caring about other people, of doing good for our neighbors around us. And when we do that, not only do we feel the Lord's presence with us in the peace and happiness and joy that comes from living a good life, but all of the people who we have loved, all of the people who we have done good to, all of those people have the opportunity to experience the Lord's love through our actions. That we get to become vehicles for the Lord's love to reach not only ourselves, but all of the people around us. And so this was the Lord's message to his disciples at his Last Supper. He was showing them that I'm going away, that the time of me being able to be here with you, to walk with you in the streets, to teach you things face to face, that's drawing to a close. But don't think that I'm going anywhere, because I'm going to be with you guys forever. You will always have me with you. And if you need to look for where I am, look no further than these symbols. This bread that I've given you shows my love that is always trying to lead you toward goodness. And this wine that I have given you represents my wisdom, which shows you the pathway towards heaven. And so when we receive the Lord's divine love and wisdom into our minds, into our hearts, and we live a heavenly life from that, then the Lord is present not just with us, but with all of the people around us. And what's powerful about this is that what they may not have realized in the moment, but when Jesus gave them this bread and gave them this wine, he changed the world forever. He changed the way that we worship. Because before this, the way that the children of Israel worshiped, the way that the Jewish nation worshiped, was through all of these external rituals. If you go back and read the book of Exodus after you get to the Ten Commandments, there's chapters and chapters of things about the tabernacle and how it's supposed to be built and where they're supposed to go and how they're supposed to bring these sacrifices and when they're supposed to bring these sacrifices and what kind of animals they're supposed to bring and all of these things, all of these external acts. That was how they had worshiped for generations. But when Jesus gave us the Holy Supper, what he did was he took all of that worship, all of those representative acts, all of those sacrifices, all of those feasts, all of those things, and wrapped them up into one simple act, which is eating this bread and drinking this wine. So he changed the way that we worship the Lord forever. Not only that, but he changed the way that we are able to have a relationship with the Lord forever. And so, this is the big message for today. That we can think of the Lord having his Last Supper with his disciples, knowing that his time on this earth was drawing to a close. And the most important thing that he wanted to give them was the key to knowing where he is at any time. He is always present with us in his divine love, inspiring us to be better people, and in his divine wisdom, in his truths that teach us how we should live. And that's why our final reading for today said that the whole of the Lord and the whole of his redemption is present in the Holy Supper. Amen. Please rise for a blessing and the closing of the word.